Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Walker. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Great to have everybody here. A special program lined up tonight. We are going to have a kind of a group review of this blockbuster, low-budget Hollywood movie, Sound of Freedom, starring Jim Caviezel. And we're going to have a special guest on in a few moments. Matt the Unseated is going to join us. To kind of provide some research, some background information. He has produced a couple of very interesting videos where he does some deep dives into the backgrounds of the people involved in the making of this hit film. He gets into some of the background of the money and where all of that is flowing, and will be giving us, I'm sure, a different perspective tonight than what we're getting from two other sides of this equation. On the one side, you have, I would say, conservative Christians. You have freedom groups, child welfare advocates, a variety of people like that on the one side, hailing the attributes of this movie that has outperformed even the new Indiana Jones flick at the box office for a production cost that is a fraction of what it costs to produce a movie like the Indiana Jones movie. Produced by Angel Studios. This was a $14.5 million project that has already recouped more than its investment for the people who backed it. So in that regard, it is already a financial success. On the other side of the equation, you have some people who are calling it out, saying that this is sort of related to the Q movement in North America, and there seems to be some justification for those. Well, how should I put it? Well, I would say they are almost like accusations, because the media people that have been leveling these attacks, and I'll call them attacks or descriptions in their reviews and news articles about this movie, I think that they intend for that description, saying that this is a QAnon associated film. I think what they're trying to do is discredit the production to make it sound like you have some crazy people who have put this thing together. So as I've watched a lot of the interviews that have been done to promote this film online with Jim Caviezel and others. I just need to check something here as well. No, okay, I'm fine. Just pushing buttons, producing while I'm also talking. Where was I? The interviews that are being done. I kind of lost my train of thought because I was dealing with some production stuff there. In any event, that's what we're going to dig into tonight. You'll have an opportunity to join this conversation and offer your perspectives, not only on the film, but also on the issue of child sex trafficking and its and the scale to which it is a problem in our home countries and abroad. So stay with me. We'll be right back, and we'll get this show on the road. Be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, we're back, and joining us live now is one of the coolest, best researchers I know. And he's been doing some background research into this new movie, Matt the Unseated. Hello, how are you this evening? Welcome back, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, Rick. I am surviving once again, and thanks for having me here. Once again, it was a pleasure being on last time in regards to the NCI. So now we can move forward and talk about a few new subjects, because we're going to branch out a little forward and not just simply talk about the movie and Tim Ballard. So let's hear some of your thoughts, man. What's up?
Well, I think it's kind of weird to me, because it's like I'm seeing this convergence of things coming together, events that make me kind of wonder if this stuff is being choreographed. So what I mean by that is, this was a movie that was originally produced a number of years ago, then shelved apparently by Disney. Then they bring it back out in this year after the pandemic, all this stuff. They bring it out on July 4th. They're using this hashtag Save the Children, which is a QAnon hashtag that goes all the way back to at least 2016, maybe even 2014. Facebook shut that hashtag down for a while because it was causing problems for the Save the Children charity, as I understand it. And they were probably just worried about it in general. Now we have this Save the Children convoy happening at the same time that this movie comes out. They're using the exact same hashtag, which may not be so coincidental just with regard to the movie, but I think maybe that has something to do with the Q movement and its influence over maybe the freedom movement and the convoy coming up. To whatever level that convoy is going to be, I don't know, but there is this going on. So you have all of this stuff going on while you have these people coming together in the streets in the most bizarre confrontational demonstrations over drag queen story hour LGBTQ rights that I've ever seen in my life, where they've got squeaky toys out, noisemakers on one side, and Christians on the other, running into the crowds, almost getting arrested, and sometimes actually getting arrested. I don't know, man. It's all gone. The world's gone nuts, and it seems like this movie comes at just the right time to capitalize on all of the unrest, all of the protests, everything going on. They're profiting like crazy because I mean it's just at exactly the right time, and I have to wonder if all of this stuff is tied together. Call me a conspiracy theorist.
Well, yeah, the timing sure is strange, that's for sure. And you know what I just want to say about the whole Q thing is just not every freedom fighter, for lack of better word, subscribes to that ideology, right?
Right.
And but you know what I've noticed, and this is kind of what I feel, is that going to, because you mentioned 2016 back with the Hillary election with Donald Trump, right? The Hillary, and so that's when a lot of this Q shit started being brought up, to my knowledge, and perhaps before that, I'm not too sure. He said something about 2014 there. I don't know,
Yeah.
but basically, what I'm saying is, it seemed like a pretty interesting opportunity for them to bring that up because, you know, you have a lot of, we'll say, borderline and perhaps even crossing right into the very pedophilic type of shit from the left side of the political spectrum with the LGB whatever community with the whole maps section. Because if you look at the rainbow flag of the pride thing, right? There's like a little spot with an arrow that has like a baby blue and pink, and I don't know what the MAPS acronym stands for. Maybe one of your viewers would know, but that's where I think we're kind of crossing into a border of like pedophilia or minor attracted persons. Like, give me a fucking break, pardon my language.
Yeah.
But basically, it's like there is an agenda with Hollywood, the media, politicians, where what they do is they show us a little degree of an issue, but they put out more fiction than truth surrounding it, right? So that's why you have the Q stuff. That's why you have this movie that comes out. Because at the end of the day, like, in order for you, Rick, to know anything about pornography, you don't need to watch a pornographic movie to know that it exists. You don't need to watch a child trafficking movie to know that it exists. And then you also have people like Jim Caviezel talking about like adrenochrome and these things that really fuel that sort of Q issue. And like, besides the video that you probably saw in regards to me talking about Tim Ballard, which I'll discuss a little bit, and this movie, I did make a video some time ago called Covfefe Bakery, where I did talk about some of the Q bullshit and like this kind of a thing. It actually goes back to Operation Trust, okay? So last time when I was on your show, I said the best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves, and I quoted Vladimir Lenin. Well, that all goes back to Operation Trust, where what the Soviets did is they set up a fake movement organization that was to lure in the anti-Bolsheviks, right? And then this is how the Soviets were able to find out who the true anti-Bolsheviks were, by literally creating the opposition themselves, right? And so to me, and also a lot of the propaganda that surrounded that fake movement at the time had to do with trusting the plan. I wonder where you've heard that before, right? And so then that's where now, you know, Q is just basically a rebranded Operation Trust, because you have all these things apparently going on that they can't prove, like I'm saving children from these deep underground military bases, and there's all these military operations going on. Want to ask me about it, Rick? Guess what? It's classified. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think we might be maybe perhaps on some of the same wavelength, but what are your thoughts on this movie in and of itself, if you don't mind me asking you directly? Do you think that this is waking the masses or making the masses sleep, or what do you think?
I don't know. I have to confess, I still have not been able to see the full movie. I
Hmm.
tried to watch it today and I couldn't get it to stream online. So I've only seen
Right.
bits and pieces of it. I've seen a bunch of reviews. So I can't say for sure. My assessment from the bits and pieces I've seen and from what I've read and from the interviews that I've seen with Caviezel and Ballard, I think there's a degree of propaganda involved here. I think there might be a degree of sincerity. I think there's a lot of profit motivation.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
that probably is the main motivator is money, 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 money.
Well, of course, and at the end of the day, like I mean, a lot of the people who are involved in nefarious activity of any sort, not just human trafficking, are people that are in Hollywood, right? And politicians, media, military-industrial complex, etc., the untouchables, for lack of better words, right? A lot of those kinds of people are involved in these nefarious activities. But why do I have to pay them for them to teach me about it? Yeah, supposedly. And also, too, see, the thing is, I like to say, like, I watch movies, myself sometimes, but I think it's very different when you have a fictitious character versus using a real name like Timothy Ballard, and you're making him out to be something he's not. So I don't know if you probably watched my second last video, because just before getting on this show, I just uploaded a new video that had to do with Tim Ballard and the Sound of Freedom. And there's pretty much a money laundering cycle of sorts between various organizations that involve Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck, who are both quite close with the Mormon Church. And I think it's kind of interesting because a lot of people who've wanted to come forward about things going on are out in Utah, which is where the main hub of the Mormon Church is. And a lot of people have wanted to come forward and speak about abuses from the Mormon Church. However, Tim Ballard has refused to take on those people. And ironically, the lawyers that Tim Ballard uses, I can't remember the name of the company offhand, but it is in my video. What happens is the Mormon Church, they have an abuse hotline, their own personal abuse hotline, which is reserved for the bishops, of course, right? So what happens is then when a bishop calls this helpline, if you will, they of course say, hey, don't go to the police, don't report it, whatever. And then there's a law firm that specifically is used by the Mormon Church, and that same law firm is also used by Tim Ballard, which is quite funny considering what he is supposed to be all about, So I just think it's kind of like, how do I put it? Whether the intention of the director or not was to fuel anything involving the Q movement, I can't say. But what I can tell you is that, yeah, it kind of does indirectly fuel that kind of a thing, because people who are like high on the Q psyop, if you will, overhype human trafficking, or at the very least speak about a lot of fictions revolving around it, or things that we can't prove. And don't get me wrong, it is a terrible issue and something that does need to be addressed, but we need to look at the truth of the matter here. And the one last thing I'll say in my little ramble is revelation of the method. So what these people do is they show us a little half truth, like the fact that trafficking exists, right, is about the most that they're honest about. They don't talk about how and why. And then what happens is, then when we're bitching and complaining about this problem and we're high on this anger and adrenaline rush from watching the movie, we go to the very same people who create these problems, or at the very least fuel them, and beg for a solution. And it's like the whole problem, reaction, solution just kind of coming into play. And what's the solution? Oh, biometric ID, right? So,
Hmm. Well, isn't that interesting? I mean, we have people who, especially on the freedom side, who are concerned about digital IDs. And what do they want to do? They want to use biometric IDs to track kids.
I know, yeah, and
Yeah.
there's actually an organization I've been looking. I think it's actually if you type in Masonic chip on Google, you can find it. But it's basically like a Freemason charity, essentially, and they are working on a sort of. It's not like a chip under your skin, right? Like, but it's supposedly a sort of track and trace type of program for if you lose your child, but I would be very cautious about submitting DNA or information about children to such an organization. So,
Yeah, there's a Wikipedia page on that exact subject, Masonic child identification programs, the Masonic chip program. So it's all out there.
yes.
For me, whenever I see people or anybody trying to use emotion to deliver a message, I get a little bit concerned. And because I know as a journalist, the most effective way to tell a story is to tell a story from the perspective of a single person instead of a group, which becomes a statistic. So you drill
Yes.
down, and that's what this movie does. It tells the story of Ballard and one child. It focuses ultimately on one child so that people can relate to this on a human level. And of course, you take this subject matter, which is horrific, and it gets people very emotionally engaged. As soon as you get people emotionally engaged, they actually stop thinking rationally sometimes
Big
and
time.
become very well, they become almost married to an idea. They become so involved with it that they can't let go of it. So and I'm seeing that kind of, and I hate to use the word, but I can't think of a better word at the moment, just mania that
Yeah.
kind of takes hold, so much so that I'm afraid to sit here tonight and say anything critical about the film because people will rip my head off if I do. And I can't really say one way or the other whether it's a good movie or a bad movie because I haven't seen the whole thing. So please don't rip my head off for that, folks.
I haven't watched the movie myself, and I don't personally plan to, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, continue. Sorry.
So yeah, it's just we're seeing too. We're seeing too much emotion-based information being delivered to people these days, and I think that's one of the reasons people sometimes just can't think straight. I want to have a straightforward conversation about the issues surrounding this film, and one of the issues is the use of statistics. I don't know how widespread the child sex trafficking problem is. I'm certain it exists. I'm
Yeah.
certain the child abuse exists. I know it's bad. I don't know, though, how large the problem is. I've seen assertions in these interviews from Caviezel and Ballard that one assertion was that the problem is so big financially that there's more money involved in it than all of the major league sports leagues combined. And I was like, what? Really? Like, or where? But no sources are cited. I've gone online and I've looked up some stats from different sources. And I mean, there's a lot out there that suggests that this is a huge problem. It's supposedly, according to some of the stats I've seen, the second biggest problem in financial terms or crime behind drug dealing.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the case.
Yes. Like, yeah, I'm in line with you about saying that when people are pretty much, it seems like they're pulling on emotion more than fact, really. And the thing is, too, also when looking at statistics, that in and of itself can be very limiting in and of itself, especially when people who I don't know too much about this issue, so forgive me, but a lot of what people attribute to child trafficking has to do with family and children's services, you know?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of aspects within our system that could, we'll say, use a brush up, touch up, or a revisioning, if you will, right? And so a lot of the times too, as well, like people are so hooked on things emotionally that they forget to really dive into the core of the matter here. And unfortunately, again, too, I think it's very different when you have a purely fictitious movie, and I'm not saying you'll learn a lesson, but like Die Hard or Lethal Weapon or something, right? They're fictitious characters in fictitious situations, versus taking a real man and you're making him out to be something he's not, you know? And the thing is too, this kind of a thing does very indirectly fuel the whole Q type of a thing as well, because it gives the idea of a white hat, you know, because he used to work for Department of Homeland Security, a white hat, which by the way is a term that Masons use for high-ranking Masons, in order to just kind of bolster somebody's image. And let me just clear something up. I just want to say, just because a lot of my content too, for anybody that's familiar with it, knows that I dive into the occult and that kind of a thing. I don't think somebody is evil because they just join a fraternity, right? There has to be something more to you than that, like you using the fraternity's craft or abilities in order to conceal, you know, trafficking or anything like that. Then yes, but you can't just look at somebody and go, oh, look, that guy's a Mason, he's evil. You know, you can't do stuff like that. I just want to clarify, because that's, you know, a large portion of what I'm attacked for, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, as well too. And speaking of which, Jim Caviezel is part of. Let me see what the specific fraternity is called. Sigma Chi, which is a Masonic fraternity of sorts. I don't know too much about them, but Jim Caviezel, Brad Pitt, and other Hollywood stars are a part of this particular one as well. So, yeah, and just on a little side note here, I just want to say I'm looking at the comments here, and I want to say that I think that Brody Shaw has brought up some pretty good points, because Police on Guard for Ye, for instance, is one that's supporting Jim Caviezel, and you think, like, no disrespect, but it's like, if I can figure out half the things that I have about Tim Ballard or about Jim Caviezel, you think that an ex-police officer should be able to figure that out. Well, like, apparently not. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I do want truth, you know, like that's what I want. I don't want to be misled. I don't want people manipulating other people. I want real facts. And when their emotions are involved, it's sometimes hard to dig down and get those. You know, and it depends on, when I'm listening to these stats, it depends on how you define stats, how those stats are collected. You can make statistics say a lot of different things. Uh, how do you define pedophilia? What exactly is the definition of child sex trafficking? What are the age ranges? Where is this, you know, what geographic area are we talking about? There are all of these different parameters, and the methodology used to compile statistics can give you very different pictures of what is going on. So I'm just a little bit cautious when people start throwing a lot of numbers around, and people doing these interviews don't even question, don't ask. No, I haven't heard a single interviewer sit there and say, well, what's your source for that? Or where did you get that number? How do you substantiate that? And I'm not trying to say that it's not true. I'm just saying we need proper perspective. If you don't have proper perspective, you can't really do anything constructive and help address any real problems.
no, and you know, Operation Underground Railroad, which is one of Tim Ballard's projects there, they have released other documentaries in the past, but the thing is, again, going back to how people are attached to their emotions and such like that, is that people, when they see something occur on a camera, like, you know, a sting that takes place with these human traffickers and their setup or whatever, and you see, you know, Tim Ballard has worked with like Dominican or Haitian police or whatever country he's in, and you know, you see the police come in and bust everybody, and you know, the children are taken out of the room. People generally don't ask questions beyond that point and go, don't you ever look into the aftercare? Like, what happens after? You know, like anything on reality TV is the furthest thing from reality, you know?
Mhm.
So, you know, like, again, emotions are high here, but if people want the truth, then unfortunately that comes with going past some of your own biases, right? And, you know, the thing too is like, when it comes down to, again, going at the aspect of fraternities too, is like people love to assume the worst with everybody and everything, right? And you know, to just assume, you know, hey, guess what? You know, all these people are like, you know, drinking the blood of children and stuff like that. Like, why do we need to go dive on these fear porn aspects? How about you actually just look into what is going on, how children are brought to where they are, if they are being trafficked, whatever, not dive into the gory details because, like, if you look at, so do you know who Sasha Stone is? Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him. I'm not familiar though.
He's like some new age guru guy. I've done a couple videos about him, and he was actually on the Jesse Howell show. And when I asked him about his affiliations to the United Nations and to um, people within the Vatican and such, people like Ciro Orsini, he turned around and referred to me as a insipid tit and started swearing at me. So apparently he couldn't handle my questions, but my point that I'm getting at is somebody like him, he has this thing called the ITNJ, the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, right? And he claims that he is taking people in who are victims of satanic ritual abuse or different kinds of abuse and that sort of a thing. He claims he is operating under natural law, okay? Whatever that means, I don't know. So he's operating under natural law and he's submitting these testimonies to the United Nations and Interpol and stuff like that. While those organizations don't deal with natural law, and with due respect, those organizations are what fuel a lot of these problems to begin with. So what good are you really doing? You're really just exploiting people who are talking about their worst possible experiences in their life, submitting their testimonies to organizations that don't give a shit about them, right? And then the organization just has a name and a face, and you're really doing the devil's work for them, you know? And, you know, it's unfortunate too, because again, movies like this or the QAnon shit or whatever it is are what fuel people to want to take some kind of action. But, you know, you have to take the right course of action, not misguided action. Because I used to think to myself, you know, because as you know, I used to volunteer for the PPC time ago, and this is how I got involved in the freedom movement. But you know, I realized even then that I don't think that there's a political solution to what is going on. But I thought to myself, I better try something rather than nothing. But that's really a defeatist mentality, right? Because you know, if you're going to sign on board something that you consider to be the lesser of two evils, well, you're not really doing the absolute best you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm a little concerned that my comments tonight might be taken out of context or twisted a little bit by people who will come back and start to attack us just because we're asking, you know, just some questions about a movie.
That's the nature of reality, man. And I mean, unfortunately, you know, the truth is stranger than fiction, and it's like a burning ball of fire, right? And so, you ever play hot potato, right? I mean, try holding on to that hot potato. So, that's kind of the nature of it. But you have every right to ask the questions, and I'm sure you got attacked a bunch as well for your NCI video in the past too.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So I don't know. Just from here, I mean, I've seen reviews from some of the big reviewers, including, you know, Roger Ebert. I think for the most part, they haven't been as aggressive with their negative comments as I thought they might be, given the nature of the film. I've seen a lot of them making reference to like Q aspects or QAnon aspects of the film. But overall, you know, they're being, I think, kind to the actor, to the producers, to the film itself. Ebert's kind of like, it's not a bad movie, but it could have been a better movie. They're kind of sticking to that line of thought.
It's kind of hard though. It's pretty hard to separate the movie from QAnon, though, especially when Jim Caviezel comes out and talks about adrenochrome and these kinds of things that go into that sort of category, right? Though, like these people are only cementing that further. So can you really blame the critics at that point? You know?
Well, I have to wonder if the producers, as part of their promotional tour, are just intentionally, manipulating people, feeding people, hot button phrases and touching on topics like adrenochrome just to get people jacked up so they go see the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, also too, if you're gonna use like false information to do that, that's kind of scummy is probably the best word I can think of for that. You
Yeah.
know, if you truly want to do something about the issue, you're going to address it and do your best to look into the facts, and also you will call out what is bullshit. At the end of the day, you're not going to use bullshit to fuel your cause, right? So, and at the end of the day, I mean, I know this might be a little bit of a stretch here, but Jim Caviezel, the producer of the movie, and the director have all been seen shaking hands with the Pope before, right? So it's like, when I think of anything wrong in this world, or anything that is wrong on a political level or leads to military, media, or whatever, what I always say in the course of my videos is all roads lead through Rome, right?
Mhm.
Because ultimately, a lot of these organizations and stuff are either subservient to the Vatican or do business with the Vatican in some way, directly or indirectly. And that's why the Holy See, which is the business for the Vatican, is what intermingles with the United Nations and the Council on Foreign Relations and such like that, which are basically the policy makers of the world, if you think about it, right?
Yeah, and so some people might not know what adrenochrome is, and it involves the killing of children and the collection of essentially adrenaline from their blood, I guess,
Yeah.
by people who are considered to be the elite who engage in these underground child sex trafficking rings where they engage in sometimes satanic ritual sacrifices of children. Is that pretty much an accurate description of what adrenochrome is all about?
Sure. Again, I think the whole adrenochrome thing is a psyop, but I think you described the psyop perfectly. Um, and when it all comes down to it too, as well, a lot of the terms in Q I try to avoid when talking about my videos, unless I am like quoting an article or something.
Mhm.
And those terms, for instance, you hear deep state and elite a lot of the time used. The reason why I don't like to use the term elites is because it inflates a sense of power for either prominent figures or shadow players behind the people we know. You know what I mean? So, like, for instance, if I was to I mentioned a name to you earlier, Ciro Orsini, right? He's a guy that runs a pizza shop, and no, I don't want people to link this to Pizzagate. What I'm saying, by the way, please don't. But he runs a pizza like chain worldwide, and Ciro Orsini he promotes something called the Knights of Saint Francis. So the Knights of Saint Francis, what it basically is if you go back in history to this order that was extinguished called the Order of the Illuminati, it was started by this guy named Adam Weishaupt in Bavaria, Germany. And a lot of the people who were attached to this organization were like Meyer Amschel Rothschild, Sir Francis Dashwood. So Sir Francis Dashwood is part of what is called the Hellfire Club, right? And just a little bit of backtracking, what I just want to say is Adam Weishaupt um, was a Jesuit, by the way. So the Order of the Illuminati was basically a Jesuit front, is what I'm getting at. And so what happens is the Hellfire Club, which is attached to it, it was like a place where people met up and were basically promiscuous. Let's just say that, right? It had a lot of prominent British and American people like Benjamin Franklin and such. So what happens is this order gets renamed from the Hellfire Club to Order of St. Francis, which is what exists today, right? And that's where Ciro Orsini comes into play. And if you can look into that last name Orsini, but there have been many popes with that last name before, right? So the way popes conceal who they are is they choose a deified saint name, and then you have to look behind whatever their real name actually is, and then that's where you'll see names like Borgia, Orsini, Rosenberg, and things that are like, how do I put it? People all know the name Rockefeller and Rothschild, who are probably watching your channel, but these are people that back up the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, if that makes sense, right? So a lot of the names that people don't know, and these are the people that they refer to as the elites, and it's like, why do I want to refer to these people as elites? They're cowards that hide, and if they didn't have this veil of deception, they would be powerless, right?
Yeah.
So, and then when it comes down to the whole deep state thing, I feel that this is what fuels the whole white hat, black hat thing, which is like to assume that apparently there are people in the intelligence community that are working along your side against those who are not, and those white hats are what are going into those deep underground military bases and saving all those children that they can't prove or talk about, right? And so it's just what fuels a lot of this BS, and a lot of the terminology, like again, I use the term white hat, is derivative of something revolving around the Masons in particular. Like white hats refer to high level degrees in Freemasonry, right? And as well, the Q for QAnon, people think it refers to Q level clearance, like Q level military clearance, but it actually refers to something called the Order of Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl is a Mesoamerican serpent deity, and basically Quetzalcoatl means plumed serpent, and plumed is like a fancy way of saying decorative, or decorative with feathers. So basically, it's like saying, look at that fancy, pretty thing. Look at that distraction, for lack of better words. Look at Quetzalcoatl and on that pretty distraction, right? So, yeah, that's a little bit of a long-winded mouthful for you there, but
Yeah.
I'll just throw some of that out there.
So we're seeing this movie. I think it's part of a growing wave, or maybe not a wave, but there are more faith-based movies being produced now, more from the conservative side. They're trying to establish, I think, an alternative stream of media production to combat the the media juggernaut that is Hollywood to some degree. And so you've got, this other vein of entertainment and media that is conservative, or sort of conservative oriented, a lot of it Christian based stuff. um I'm getting even Epic TV, at the Epic Times, they have their own productions that they put online now. And uh, do you have any thoughts on any of that? Is that
Yeah, I
coming into
do.
play
Just
here?
first, I just want to say, and I just want to ask this gentleman in the chats a question if he wants to type something out. But Kurt Boss, he said something about a secret society, Agnus Dei. I think he meant to say Opus Dei. So if he wants to explain what Opus Dei is, because I don't know a whole lot about it, I'd love to hear about that. So, but in regards to what you said now, so the way I would put it is Ordo ab Cal, order out of chaos, right? Which is apparently a motto of the Masons as well. But what happens is they always like what these people like to do to confuse people like you and I is they like to set up a dualistic paradigm for you to be trapped in, and each side of the debate, for lack of better words, might contain certain elements of lies and truth, but never the complete full picture. They do this with globe Earth versus flat Earth, jab versus no jab, etc., right? So when it comes down to this kind of a thing, like one aspect trying to combat Hollywood, as you say, or some of these elitist figures, for lack of better words, is this is almost like so with the Q movement, generally speaking, they use Donald Trump as the face of trusting the plan, the guy running the operations or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
some of these myths or interpretations of Q might be a little bit different because there's always several subcategories, especially when you dive into the freedom movement, like how many people believe in a political solution, common law, etc., right? So, what I'm saying is they have to set up a sort of paradigm of one side attacking the other so that nobody can ever cut in between, right, and read between the lines. So a lot of the right wing, for lack of better words, will take the side of Donald Trump, let's say, right? And then I'm gonna overly generalize here, but like you have the right that subscribes to the QAnon type of crap, and Trump is this guy that is fighting the elites or whatever the case is. And then on the other side, for the people that would more or less subscribe to the left, is like we just want this equality thing. We just want everybody to apparently be accepted, although the reality is like they say inclusion, but they actually mean exclusion, because Black Lives Matter or Every Child Matters or whatever it is, any of these very vague phrases that like don't all lives matter, you know. So to kind of answer your question, I think that when they pit one famous person versus another, it's just a certain element of the world stage for us to get sucked in. And like I had a conversation with a friend who basically said, well, if this is a stage, you have the opportunity to perform. And I said, well, the stage is not like an open mic night. It's more like that of a fixed script, like going to go pay to see a play at whatever venue. So that's kind of my thoughts on it all. It's a dualistic paradigm to trap people so that one side is fighting the other and neither has the complete picture. The left denies the existence of QAnon and this bullshit, right? But they also at the same time fuel a lot of the what's the term I'm looking, like any of this gender equality, race equality BS. And then the right, they attack those things, and rightfully so, but at the same time they're fueling the QAnon BS, right? Which then you look crazy to the left and the left looks crazy to the right. And then what progress is actually made, right?
So I sort of first became familiar with Ballard probably a year ago when he did an interview that I took note of online. And now here we are with the actual release of the movie now. And I get a little concerned because I think people are not as media literate as they need to be these days. And a lot of people have become conditioned to sort of get their facts or their information from dramatic representations. They get their history about World War II from Saving Private Ryan, which is not a documentary, it's a drama.
Yes.
They're getting this information now, which is positive insofar as it's initiating or it's a catalyst for conversation about these important topics. But we have to remember that even though they're saying it's based on a true story, it's based on a true story. It's not a documentary. It's not an actual depiction of actual events. It's a dramatic representation. It has actors in it. It's produced.
Correct.
You've got action sequences to keep you engaged, a dramatic musical score that accompanies it to get people emotionally involved. So it's not truth. It's a dramatic representation of what is supposed to be true events and true facts, but you have to dig beyond that to really find actual truth, because this is not reality. This is drama.
Yeah, you have to go beyond Hollywood movies, and even with due respect, even to go beyond that of like InfoWars and stuff like that, because somebody who's shouting the frogs are gay might not always be the best person to take advice from, but you should really read between the lines, because like the thing is the main thing that stands out to me about World War II, actually, maybe people might give a different answer, but the main thing that stands out to me is the creation of the United Nations. Right. And then with World War I, it was the creation of the League of Nations. Right. Yeah. And so it's just all these so-called big peace organizations. I, of course, use that term with a grain of salt. All these so-called peace organizations that get created. But all they're really doing with these giant wars is they are consolidating their activities into larger organizations. And, people also don't seem to ask questions like, why was Switzerland funding both sides of the war when they're considered neutral? That doesn't sound like a neutral country to me. That sounds like an opportunistic country, especially one that has the Bank of International Settlements, the bank of all banks there, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, it's good to. I just want to say as well, thanks for having me here, because it's good that we get to have these conversations, and whether you and I agree on the subject matter or not, that's irrelevant. You know, I like to encourage people to think for themselves, and like in my content, I'll always leave links for how I find things, but you know, I'm human, I'm capable of making mistakes, right? So, and the other thing I just want to say, just on the side note, I'm going to highlight Brody Shaw again from comments back. He said the left and the right play for the same team, and yes, absolutely, I'm inclined to agree with that statement 100%.
Yeah. So what I've done here now is I've posted a link that you can click on, folks. And if you want to use your phone or a webcam, if you come into the back studio, just click on that, use your camera, and you can join the conversation with us here. And we'll have a group discussion moving forward. I have to also mention that at the end of this program at 8 p.m., Lori has a special guest on her program, Strange Bedfellows, which will be over just on the Rumble channel. And she's going to be interviewing Russell Bentley, the Donbass cowboy, an American who went over to fight for Russia against Ukraine. So she'll be finding out more about him. And he's a colorful character, to say the least. But yeah, join the conversation here right now by clicking on that link. And we can put you guys on video with us. You can come right in here and join the conversation, and we'll see where that goes. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get some other people in on the action here. We shall return.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And we do have somebody ready to join us. Are you ready for this, Matt? Here he is, the mouth of the South, Leo.
Hey, Leo, what's happening, bro?
What's happening, Matt? Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to listen to you and see you, buddy.
Yeah, I survive every day, like I told Rick. I generally see you in the comments more than speak to you, so it's good to be here and actually see you as face to face as possible as we can be in the virtual realm. So.
Yeah, I got a mental illness. It's called the Maverick Multimedia Show.
Very good.
Well, you've clicked on the link, so let's hear what you have to say. What are you thinking about this?
I haven't watched the movie either, and I'm not going to waste my time, my money, or my energy on something that I know that's going on. Okay, it's going on an international scale. It's bigger than a lot of people know. We discussed it the other day about Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, okay, the Southeast Asia part. Ukraine is probably one of the biggest sex trafficking countries in the world, and it's known for that, right? So, you know, Jim Caviezel don't have to tell me what's going on, or Mel Gibson. I know what's going on.
Yeah, I looked up some stats online because I didn't want to just take these guys at their word. I have to admit, the problem from all the stats that I've seen, much bigger than I ever would have imagined, but I'm still wondering what the methodology was to compile the data, and
I call it the perfect storm to stir the pot. Okay. And it's the perfect storm, the perfect timing. Okay. As a movie director or whatever, right? They want to make money and squeeze as much money as they can out of this film. You can't ask for better timing. Okay, you got all these
Yes.
uprisings and movements going on, right? It's all about the dollars at the end of the sense. At the end of the day, I don't care what Jim Caviezel says. He's a Catholic, this and that, and he won't do movies where he's having sex, this and that. But Jim Caviezel could grab a gun and shoot somebody in the head in a movie. I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can stick your passion of the Christ up your ass, okay? I don't believe in that one either, okay? That's me.
See, I watched the red carpet event for the premiere of the movie, and they had like a lot of the actors and the people involved, and they all came up and they talked about how it was like a calling for them.
Yeah.
It was like a spiritual thing for them to get involved in the movie. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe a couple of you, but I don't know. This seems to be a universal theme developing.
Well,
Everybody's got a calling to get involved in this
well,
project.
when you have mushroom stores popping up in your towns, you're going to have callings everywhere and visions. I guarantee it. Okay. Just like, what was her name? Rose, we had on the other night talking about the, what's that bird that the natives use? Not the eagle.
The Thunderbird?
The Thunderbird. She had a vision that the Thunderbird, she's seen the Thunderbird in the skies. Yeah, well, she was probably at that local mushroom store down in Ottawa that they have prior to watching or seeing these visions, right? So I don't believe, you know what? If I don't see it, I don't believe it, period. And if I'm going to use the drug of the day, I'm still not going to believe it. I'm going to blame it on the drug of the day. That's me.
Well, I don't know. It's still pulling in big bucks at the box office.
Well, good. I'm happy for him.
Yeah, it's
I'm happy for him. I'm not against the movie. Don't get me wrong. Anybody that brings in the focus of child sex trafficking or human trafficking, it don't matter if you're a child or an adult. Okay, anybody that brings awareness to that, I tip my hat to them. Okay, and I hope they make billions of dollars doing it. Okay, as long as they give some of that money back to the right causes, and that's to fight child trafficking and everything else, right? Will we see money go that way? We'll see how honorable they are, right?
Well, I'm just curious though. Well, what about putting money into Hollywood for them to show you that, because I feel like you're just putting that money into those very same types of traffickers, by paying for it to be like this. And you also are probably seeing nothing you already don't know about for the most part without, a couple Google searches or, your own brain, right?
Well, yeah, look at Kevin Spacey and guys like that, right? They re-nicknamed Hollywood the Pedalwood.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been going on in Hollywood for years, especially with a lot of women, right? If they wanted the role, they had to take off their tops and panties and perform sex acts to get that lead role, right? With a lot of these producers, it's been going on too long. Okay, and anybody that makes awareness to it, and the Caviezel and the Ballard and Mel Gibson and everybody involved in it. I haven't seen the movie. I'll watch the movie when it comes out for free on Amazon or Netflix because I'm cheap like that, right? I'm not going to go waste my time or my money to go down to the Cineplex and pay $20 for a bag of popcorn in the process too, right? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I can't afford to go to the movies anymore, man. It's terrible. Who remembers $2 Tuesdays?
Hey, you know what's funny, Rick? My son and his buddies and girls, they all went to the movies last week, and they know somebody who checks the bags at the movie place. It's one of their friends. Well, they went to McDonald's and loaded up all this McDonald's and went into the movies. And they came home and he's 18 today, right? And he's like, Dad, we snuck McDonald's into the thing. And I'm thinking, man, I'm so glad my kid's nothing like me. Okay, he's more like his mother, because at 18 years old, I would have been sneaking bags of weed and joints and whatever, beer, right into the movies. These kids are just, they're happy that they got to sneak McDonald's into the place, right? Where, in my time was nothing like that. We hopped trains, bumper hitch cars in the wintertime, beat people up. We did what we did, right? We got punched out. We punched other people out. We had gang fights in the park. There was no social media. So, you got on that handy dandy hard line. You wanted to beat somebody up in the park. You called your backup. Okay. It took hours to get everybody together and organized. Now you got social media. I could go Facebook Live, say, hey, meet at the park. We're going to beat some people up. You got 300 people battling in 20 minutes, right? So these kids today, they're nothing like we were. They're not cut from the same cloth. And it's a good thing. You know, I don't want my kid hopping trains and bumper hitching and beating people up either, right? So, you know, you
So
can
Matt,
sneak your McDonald's into the movies if that's the biggest thing you're going to do.
you have to do that today. You can't afford the popcorn and the drinks
No
at the
shit.
theater. My goodness. Before we bring Heidi in from the back room, Matt, how can people find your videos, the two that you produced, digging into this in a deeper way?
Well, just like my screen name here on Maverick, Matt the Unseated is how you'll find me on YouTube. And just before coming on here, I did release a part 2 to that video as well. So that's how they can check that out. And as well, there were some things that you were touching on that I thought were interesting. I just wanted to point out here.
Sure.
Just that like normalization of pedophilia or trafficking going on in the world. The thing is, this has been going on for a very long time. It's just that now it's not so subtle. So if I even go back to like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, for instance, Willy Wonka says to the children to lick this wallpaper, right, which he calls snozberry, right? If you look up what snozberry is, you'll just find it's derogatory slang for a penis. So like, you know, this kind of crap has been going on for a long period of time. It's just that it's not as in your face, or as in your face in the 60s is all I'm going to say, right? So, yeah, and also these people, it's not their intention to bring any sort of real awareness to anything. It's just what I call revelation of the method, which is just to simply desensitize you to these things. And on another side note too, to Kurt Boss, who's in the chats there, he mentioned it was Angus Day, not Opus Day. But if he wants to describe what Angus Day is, I would very much love to hear about that, because it's a fraternity I've never heard of. So.
Well, he says trafficking is the result of endless war and global poverty caused by global capitalists. Or they could just be perverts.
Yeah, but I mean, as for global capitalists, it's very much like think about Tim Ballard for a second, right? He has several organizations, right? And there's basically a giant cycle for how money is laundered, where what happens is you have something called the Child Liberation Foundation, which is ran by Paul Hutchinson, who used to be part of OUR. And the Child Liberation Foundation puts money into 6 different organizations, including OUR, the Nazarene Fund, Mercury One, and others. And what do these organizations do? They put that money into timballard.com, which makes its own money from the Sound of Freedom movies, speaking events, books, and such. And then timballard.com cycles money into an organization called Slave Stealers, which is ran by Tim Ballard, someone named Brian Norton, I think, and then Russell Ballard, who, by the way, Russell Ballard is not related to Tim Ballard. Russell Ballard's great-grandfather was Hiram Smith, which is the brother of Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormons, also a Freemason. So, here we go.
Let's bring Heidi in. The camera seems to be off. Oh, here she comes.
Oh, hello.
And there's Heidi. Hello.
Heidi. Hello.
Hello, sister from another mister.
Okay, Matt, thank you so much for your all your research about the Mormon and Masonic connections. I wanted to and Mouth of the South, he was talking about Dubai, right? The trafficking in Dubai.
Well, it probably goes on big in Dubai, but the Ukraine, Southeast Asia,
Right.
Russia, okay, the sex trafficking's huge internationally, right? It's huge
Right.
In North America too, but
Yeah.
worldwide.
Right. Okay. So I wanted to give you an example. I agree with you, Rick and Matt, that we need more documentaries and not just movies. But it seems like the people who are trying to make the documentaries are somehow disappearing, like Anne Heche and Elena Hutchinson, who was killed on the set of Rust. They were working on child trafficking documentaries at the times of their death, along with Yeah, along with Virginia Representative Jackie Walorski. Okay, so anyway, the Real Raw News wrote a simple article about a ship from Dubai that had been intercepted in the San Francisco Bay. And they said that the Navy SEALs had killed a few of the kidnappers on the ship, and JAG was involved, and Judge Advocate General. And the good thing, well, first of all, they said that these traffickers had gone into San Francisco and drugged teenagers and children and brought about 60 to 80 of them on the ship. They were going to bring them back overseas, and but they said they reunited the children with their families and were going through trauma counseling, and they followed up on it. So that's why it was from realrawnews.com, and that's why I trust those articles where they just give details but not sensationalism.
You know what? You're 100% right. Okay, especially in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, the Middle East, the child sex slaves. Okay, that they bride them in. Okay, you got these sheiks that'll marry 11, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. Okay, and they line them up, and they're allowed to have 13 wives or whatever, and how their culture calls for. Right. This has been going on for a long time.
I'm just looking up this website. Real Raw News, huh?
Yeah, Real Raw News. There's also, if you want to write this down, there's a website called Allie's Army. She's a child trafficking survivor of 18 years. She is one of the best testimonials of what happens in the United States between all the agencies, foster systems, the CPS. She was trafficked around from birth. She miraculously survived, but all her testimonies are on her website. She has an adoptive mother who helps her through her trauma when she's speaking in public, but they're in hiding. They have to move to different states every month. So, but she has so much evidence. Her name is Allie Carter. Yes, that's the article. Thank you, Rick.
Hey, Matthew, speaking of the elite in Rick, okay, I watched a documentary on Senator Shorty from Laurie State, Oklahoma. You know anything about this, Rick?
No, I don't think so.
Well, he was charged and convicted. He was a sitting senator, and he was caught with a 17-year-old boy in a room, in a motel room. Okay, and it took some time. He still sat on the board. The governor tried to get him out. Everybody tried to get him out. Finally, he was convicted, and I think he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. And that was recently, I think, 2019. You don't hear much about that because he's part of that elite group. He was a sitting senator, Senator Shorty.
We'll see if Shorty gets off on good behavior or reduced sentence.
Well, look at just in my own town, rapists and shit like that. I call him Ben Bernardo. His name's Ben Smythe, serial rapist, convicted, nearly killed a woman. Rick's read through the article. Okay, it's pretty gruesome. Okay, the DNA nailed him. He got 5 years in prison. He was out on the street in less than 3 years, and I confronted him on video. Okay, so that just shows the way our justice system is. It's the same thing in the U.S., right? I don't know what the Oklahoma's laws are like, but 7 years for raping and being involved in the sex trade with minors is a joke.
Big time. Yeah, that sentence in and of itself is a joke, but also, too, when you just look at the justice system as a whole in whatever country you're speaking about, however harsh they might be on certain sentences or light on others, the bar or the temple bar, if you will,
right,
are attorneys, lawyers, and judges, right? They all literally work for the same party. So even if there is no sort of political motive or for fixing your trial, it is basically fixed at the end of the day in the sense of you have major conflicts of interest right there already.
Can I ask you guys, are either of you familiar with this Real Raw News website? Because I'm not. And when I'm looking at the articles, these are all stories, or most of them, that I've never seen any other place. Then when I look up information about Real Raw News, I'm seeing that there are some concerns about the credibility of the site, which doesn't surprise me, but just makes me want to dig into it more. So before
Okay.
I would endorse any information coming from there, I would want to verify.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always like I always do my best to fact check everything I can, regardless, right? Because I mean, when it comes down to the word, let's take the word pharmacy, right? It comes from pharmakia, which means maker of poisons, and then you take the word media, comes from a Greek sorceress named Media who casted illusions. Funny how that works. This includes alternative media in the same sort of bracket. No disrespect to Maverick here.
Yeah.
You-
So
you're-
I just
you're a
caution
smart
everybody, check everything you're reading, because I know
Yeah.
nothing about that site. And just the one red flag that goes up immediately is all these stories. I haven't seen them any other place. So it's like, why, because if the Marines or that general that was quoted in the one story that I brought up, if he's releasing that information, he would put that out to other media outlets, and we would be hearing about this story, at least in some other places, I would think. But this is all news to me. Not to say it's not true. But I'm just saying I don't know. So let's verify before we accept it as fact. How about that?
Type in the name Senator Shorty, Rick, on Google. Oklahoma.
Yes. And Rick,
Yeah.
you're so right about that. I also wanted to tell you though, I'm not sure if you believe this or but anything that the Navy SEAL does and the JAG does is usually not televised a lot. They work in secret a lot. So like you said, yeah, we have to dig deeper about everything.
Yeah, SEAL Team 6 is basically like the Black Ops of the Navy SEALs, and that's where the Punisher skull comes from there. So, yeah, it'll be very difficult to find stuff like revolving around organizations like that, and especially on mainstream news outlets like CNN, CBC, Fox, etc. Right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go, Leo. I found that information. I put it up on the screen for you.
That's him. That's Senator Shorty, convicted child rapist, a sex trafficker.
Yeah.
And he's a sitting senator in Oklahoma.
So when they refer to sex trafficking, would that include, say, dancers that come over and take jobs at strip clubs in Canada and the US from places like the Czech Republic and even, Ukraine now? Or would that also include these women that I see being advertised online that you can marry and bring over here? I've seen ads like that.
It all depends, Rick. There's a few strip clubs in Toronto that were rousted by the police for bringing in imports of gay women, and they were enslaving them to do the job of dancing in their clubs. Okay, and it's one thing. You got the college girl that's trying to pay her way through college that goes to our strip clubs, Cheetahs in Windsor, Ontario, goes to Cheetahs to try and make her tuition right. There's a fine line. Well, there's not a fine line. It's cut and dry. Okay. There's the willing, and then there's the ones that are unwilling. Okay. And a lot of it had to do with Ukraine at the time. And they were importing Ukrainian women and Russian women over, and the mafias or whatever, the mobs were taking them and exploiting them, right? In clubs, in brothels. Okay. And that's trafficking. Anybody who makes a transaction for sex, that's trafficking. Period. Okay, it's illegal, and I don't care if it's a lot of people say, "Oh, well, prostitution should be legal." No, it shouldn't. Not in my eyes. It shouldn't be legal. Anybody who takes a that has to go that route, I don't know. I don't know. It don't make sense to me at the end of the day. It's all about dollars.
Yeah.
Richard.
And
Yeah,
sometimes
in line. I'm in line with that statement for sure. And also too, the thing is, it's like for what you had said about the strip clubs in Toronto, there, that definitely does speak volumes because a lot of people, I think, who do seek those sort of things, right? They might be convinced that they're going for like a legitimate work, legitimate sex trade, but it's like it's really not. And regardless of legalities, it's not really something I support either way. Just very much like yourself. So
Well, we got a guy down here. His last name's Katzman, who owns I think he owns them all now. All the dance stripper clubs in Windsor, Leopards, Cheetahs, Alley Cats, you name it. And I call him. He's a lawyer. Okay, by the way, I call him a pimp. Period. You know, I know women. They go to clubs. They want to make money. They take off their clothes. This and that. They don't know the dangers that are involved with it. Okay, at the end, you got the drugs, you got the lure of money for sex. Okay,
there's people that hang around those clubs too. Like you have the mob and like porno directors and stuff like that do hang around those clubs and wait for somebody who is naive in order to lure them in. And like I do know people that started off as strippers but then literally became prostitutes on the street, right?
exactly. It's the lure of the dollar in the beginning, and in the end, it's the lure of somebody's life. Okay, and like you said, the mob, the bikers, everybody, they all hang out in these places. You know, sex sells, right? Plain and simple. There's money in it, and it's bigger than everybody thinks it is. I don't need Jim Caviezel, Mel Gibson, and those guys to tell me, that's something that I already know. I see it. Okay, I'm not oblivious to what goes on in my city because it's going on if it's going on in Windsor, Ontario, it's going on in every city. And if you go to places like Vancouver, okay, they have catalogs. Okay, you have your A lists, your B lists, your C lists on hookers. You could dial up hookers. Okay, it's like Las Vegas. Okay, even though they say in the city center of Las Vegas, prostitution's illegal, believe it or not. Okay, they have brothels on the outside of Vegas. Okay, where women work out of. Okay, and they're being exploited, plain and simple, right? And the government needs to do
a very
more.
dirty city, that's for sure. And like even what is it, Winnipeg as well. Like I mean, there's a lot of poverty there, which I think poverty might be the root of this problem potentially. I'm not an expert on the subject, so don't quote me on that. But that's where you have a lot of people who literally prostitute out their own children because they literally they can't make any money of sorts, or are stuck in a position where there's no clean water, etc. And
I worked with a fella. He was about 21 years old, machinist, about 20 years ago, and he was right into the Sex Pistols and everything else. But he was a strange kid, right? But he was pretty honest, and he told me that his dad, when he was 14 years old, moved him to Los Angeles. Okay, and his dad was a hardcore heroin addict. He prostituted his own son, the kid I was working with, pimped his own kid out to feed his fucking drug addiction. Okay, he ended up dying of an overdose, and I thought it was a pretty far-fetched story, but why would he tell me that, right? And then later on in the years, about 5 years ago, his brother, really good guy, was working with me, and he said, "Oh, you know my brother Jeff?" I said, in the last day, I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, how's he doing?" "Oh, he died of an overdose." I said, "He was telling me a story." He said, "Yeah." He said, my dad was brutal. They split up. He took the one kid to LA, and the mom kept him, right? So he was away from his father, but he said his dad was brutal. Okay, and he exploited his own kid. This goes on. Okay, we were talking about Camp Oda the other night in Thailand and everywhere else. You go to these countries where it's piss pot poor, they can't even feed their own families. The families are offering up their children. In the Philippines is huge for sex trafficking. Okay, so
yeah, big time, even all over South America too. But I actually just want to highlight a comment here. Patricia Ingalls has got the nail right on the head. She says, "These women are exploited and see this as an income because there's no family or no help."
I disagree. Okay, there's help out there. You got to take it. You got to find it. Okay, there's shelters that critique to this. Period. Okay, I got a friend that owns a shelter. She does wonders in my town, Lisa Valente, and she's dealing with women that not only just that are homeless, drug addicted, but sexually abused in the whole 9 yards. Right. So there is help out there. I don't think people know how to reach for that help, and where's it at, right? So there needs to be more awareness in every city. The government needs to step up and do more. All levels of government, not just the federal government, the provincial and municipal governments need to step up.
So with though there being certain services and stuff like that that different cities and municipalities would offer, yeah, I'll bite the bullet on that one. But as for a lot of these shelters, for instance, a lot of them are at overcapacity. And what does the federal government do? What does Justin Trudeau do? Constantly bring in more refugees and immigrants, right? And even setting up housing for them, right? And sometimes they have jobs at Amazon before they even land in Canada, right? And then as well too, the shelter issue is not necessarily dealt with accordingly because again, everything is at like an overcapacity, and people are constantly stuck on waiting lists. And what are they doing while they're on the waiting list? They're on the streets,
Right.
and probably prostituting, right? So,
but when we have money, when we have multiple billions to give to countries like Ukraine, and like you said, the refugee issue, right here in my own city, the Best Western, I can't even get a room at the Best Western. You know why? Because it's filled with Roxham Road crossers. Okay, it's filled. We got about 600 or 700 of them in the city right now that were supposed to be dispersed 2 months ago. They're still here, and they're going to be here till after Christmas. Okay, and they're paid gracefully. They're fed. Okay, and I can't even get a room at the Best Western on the riverfront. The riverfront of all Best Westerns. Okay, and they overlooking downtown Detroit. What a great view for these Roxham Road crossers, right? So the government has the money. They just put it in the wrong places in Ukraine and these illegal crossers and you name it, right?
and we can't even call this mismanagement anymore. I call it order out of chaos because it's just simply political motivations where people are again sticking their money into like Ukraine, like you said, or other wars and causes that are more on the downscale, like Yemen and that sort of a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just really a funding of the war machine. And somebody in the comments there had basically said that these shelters as well are rated by men identifying as women or women identifying as men. And like in this day and age too, with a lot of that kind of I don't even want to call it controversy, I call it perversion. But with any of this kind of perversion, you're literally basically having a shelter as an open invitation for people to get sexually assaulted right at that point, especially in the day and age where every man is a woman and every woman's a man, right?
One of my daughters is struggling, right, with financial things, right, like everybody else in Canada. And I noticed she's been drinking a little bit more booze lately than she should be, right? So I talked to her. I said, "What's wrong? Why? Well, $500 on my hydro. I can't pay my phone bill." This. I said, "Why wouldn't you just come to me? I'm your father, right?" "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I'll pay your bills." So I wiped her clean yesterday, right? I said, "Now you got nothing to worry about, right? But come to me. I'm your father." And a lot of people don't know how to ask their parents. They feel like weak. I don't know, right? But don't. There's help out there for everybody. Now I know there's a lot of assholes out there, parents that don't give a shit about their kids. I do, right? And
Well, your daughter's fortunate to have a man like you, right? Because not everybody would just absolve one's debt and stick their neck out for their child, right?
Well, I absolved the debt, but the debt's on me now, right? I got to pay it, right? So
yeah,
that's fine. I'm happy with it as long as she's happy, right? I want her to stand on her own 2 feet as a father, but in these times, it's struggling times for a lot of people, and you're going to see, especially women, they're going to resort to extreme measures, right? When you can't put the gas on, you got little kids at home, you can't feed your own kids. What are you going to do? They're going to some are going to jump right into the sex trafficking, right? If there's money there, it's going to happen.
So, any other thoughts on the movie?
Yeah, it was a great movie, Rick. It was one of the best movies I ever seen. No, I still haven't seen it. I could care less to see it unless it's for free on Netflix or Amazon. And then I'll watch it. I got time, right? But I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it. So,
Isn't it available through Prime or some streaming services? I thought, or is it just in theaters right now?
if it's on Prime, it might be for sale. I haven't seen it on there. I was on Prime last night after work or this morning after work, and I didn't see it on there. Or I would have watched it, right? But I'm not going to watch it. Like on Prime, you could pay for it, right? $20 for the movie. I'm not going to pay for it.
Yeah. And do you think that this will? How do you think this is going to affect things on the streets and within, as we continue to see these conflicts and protests at these LGBTQ plus, all these, you know what I'm talking about?
I don't go to them, Rick. I don't
Yeah.
go to the protests or the anti-protests. Okay, I don't even go to the gay pride parade. So,
Yeah.
I'm in the middle and I'm just sitting back eating my $20 bag popcorn, watching it, going, right? Can I get a little more butter and salt on my popcorn, please? Because
Yeah. Do you think it'll have any impact though, or what do you think, Matt?
yeah.
Sorry. Do I think what will have any impact?
Will the movie have an impact on, I guess, the way the mood that we're seeing out there, where we're seeing almost daily protests with confrontation and conflict on the street at these drag queen story time things. This seems to just play into all of that, where you've got people waving their Bristol board signs saying "Save the children from the pedophiles," the child groomers, and it's just, I see it kind of amping all of that up.
So, for one thing, somebody in the comments here, AnestyNativeBeauty.ca, says actual survivors are against this movie for good reason. So,
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with that comment there. And also to more or less answer your question, this is like what I said about the left and the right playing off of each other. Organizations like, we'll say, Rebel News and such will highlight things like the drag queen story time and stuff like that. People will show up and protest, with their big signs or whatever. I'd say, end trafficking or whatever. But all you're doing is you're actually just looking crazy to those people, right? They think you're crazy. You think they're crazy, right? And people are just playing off of each other there. And I don't think that you can really protest your way out of any of this. Protesting is great for like a small scale situation. Like, I have a small business that we don't allow youths in here because youths are just ruffians who steal, right? Then great, that one business, you protest in front of this one business, great, but for a worldwide issue, and for issues that are, all over Canada, like this LGB, more like the MAPS thing, I want to say, is more of an issue, because I don't care what people do in the privacy of their own bedroom. What consenting adults do is not my business, right? But you definitely don't need to highlight that for the world,
Right.
Yeah. Let's bring Nate. Is it Nate?
Come here.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's Note.
Note. Oh,
Notable.
I couldn't read that. Now I see who it is. Welcome.
Hello there, other sister
Nice to
from
see your
another mister.
smiling face.
I'll put you in here.
Hi, guys.
Hey, no,
Hi.
Rick, look at this. This is one of my beautiful daughters.
Well, hello, beautiful daughter.
That's Brianna. And who helps you out the most in life, Bri?
My dad.
My dad, right. She knows she can come to me for anything. And my other daughter, she's in Manitoba right now doing a little drive across the country. She knows she can count on me and my son, everybody right in my family. That's what family's about, right?
That's awesome. So what are you thinking, Note? And who's your sidekick?
This is Mister. He's my Maine Coon kitty. He's kind of a big boy, but he keeps me going. I know you're not into kitties, but he's a polydactyl, if you've never heard of it. So he's got mittens. His claws are, yeah.
Polydactyl, is that anything like a pterodactyl, like a feline pterodactyl. It's going to eat my
In the kitty
brains.
world, sure. Yeah, he's got extra big. He's got thumbs, so his paws look like mittens.
Oh, well, if he has opposable thumbs, put him to work. He can use tools.
Yep, absolutely.
He could
Anyway,
probably spell better than me. Put him on the type.
Yeah.
actually, he actually communicates much better than me some days. So I have to admit. But
Well, communicate your thoughts on this film and the conversation we've had so far. What would you like to highlight?
well, I missed the first part, sadly, because I was busy with life. But when I tuned in, I was a bit taken aback as to what the conversation was, and it wasn't very positive about the movie. So that kind of threw me. And then as I sat back and listened more, I got more and more interested, because I'm very interested in hearing all the different sides to this.
Mm-hmm.
The one positive for me about this movie is that the conversation is out there. I think that's super vital, because I think people have been completely oblivious about any of this going on. Oh, well, how about that? Hang on. There's somebody at the door.
Well,
I'm watching a movie right now on Who Killed Bob Marley. Okay, it's on Netflix.
who killed Bob Marley? Didn't he die of cancer?
No, he got shot. Somebody shot her. Who shot Bob Marley? Right.
Oh, well, there you go.
Celebrity deaths are always something I'm on the fence about, whether even real or staged. The world is a stage after all.
It is.
Sorry about that.
It's unfortunate you missed the first part, because that was the best part. That was just Rick and I. No, I'm just kidding, guys.
It was.
It says here he died of melanoma in 1981.
Yeah, he was shot. Okay, yeah, that's what it's called. Who shot Bob Marley?
I'll be right back.
And at the same time, it was there was a political election going on in Jamaica.
Melanoma is skin cancer.
Yeah.
So
He was shot though. He was shot. Then he played a concert the same night he was shot. Believe it or not, he ended up playing the show. And that was the thing. Who shot Bob Marley? They thought the Manley, who was the premier of or president of Jamaica at the time. Okay, they thought he had something to do with Bob Marley being shot. Right, there was political uprisings going on in Trenchtown, I think it is. Yeah, Trenchtown.
I have to go down and get something.
So that's up there with JFK. Who shot Bob Marley? Peace, love, and happiness guy. And they shot him.
Well, I don't understand that, Leo, because I'm looking up other articles and it says he died of skin cancer.
He didn't. He didn't die. He didn't die from the shot. Somebody shot him.
Oh, okay.
That's the name of the documentary. Who shot Bob Marley?
Not fatally, but they shot him.
Right.
All right.
Right. So yeah, he didn't die from that.
All right. Well, let's get back onto the movie.
I'm waiting
But
for
we've lost Note. Well, that was anticlimactic. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts, Heidi? You've been kind of quiet there for a few minutes.
I'm just thinking too much, but I did want to say one thing about when people talk about Hunter Biden and the prostitutes, some of those poor women have had their IDs actually changed. So their names are different and their ages are different. So they're not always these consenting prostitutes, if you understand what I mean.
Huh.
Okay, I know nothing about that.
Okay.
I'm not aware of any information about changing of identifications.
Okay.
I'm just saying I don't know.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
So where do I find that?
Oh, yeah, another place I was mentioning earlier about Allie Carter.
Yeah.
Her website, alliesarmy.com. Her ID was literally changed at birth because she was born into this worldwide trafficking ring. So she was given a different name at birth and then passed from foster home to foster home, which was a cover for the sex trafficking ring. If you go to her website, it's pretty clear, what she went through from birth to age 18. She was also under, that kind of MK Ultra mind programming that they do. But yes, you can go to her site and yeah, they know how to change IDs.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I see a Facebook page here for Allie's Army. Looks like she
Oh,
takes her kids to McDonald's. It's probably
oh my
not the right
gosh.
thing, but anyway, I'll see if
No,
I can
no.
find it. Let's carry on here, though. Is Note back?
Yeah.
Is Note still not back?
Oh,
I
okay.
really
And
wanted to
the
go check that
website is
out.
alliesarmy.com.
How do you spell Allie?
Allie, ALLIY, ALLY,
No,
alliesarmy.com. And she's been a whistleblower for like
I've got it.
10 years. Okay. Her story is finally getting out.
Yeah, Dan, I'm not familiar with this person at all.
Okay, you would have to read her testimonials, but she talks about the Getty Museum below Los Angeles, and also she claims she was trafficked to Biden, along with some sports players and a few musicians.
I see.
It's not a happy story. The website has a warning for we who have trauma and PTSD, but she's pretty legitimate.
Okay, well, I'll look into that more as well. As I'd say,
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that, so that's
Okay.
something else to look
Thank
at
you.
for sure. Yeah, she's back. Hello, Note. Okay, so we've been holding the fort down, waiting for you, and the floor is yours. I don't even remember where we left off now.
I think I was just talking about the movie and the surprise on the reaction at the conversation, because I missed the first part. And but I was just saying that I'm glad that the conversation has started. I think this is something that I was very worried about in Canada, because I kept noticing how many people seem to be going missing, and then we'd never hear anything. And that was always really, really noticeable to me. And I would even say to my friends, like, haven't you noticed, like, there's another person gone missing, another child gone missing, and yet we never ever hear anything. And so and people would just shrug their shoulders and carry on with their day, kind of thing. But this was always something kind of stuck in my mind. So when this movie came out and the talk about it and everything, I was just really glad to see that. Just because the conversation needed to happen. Anything outside of all that, I don't know enough about it. And like I said, I unfortunately missed the beginning part of your program. So, and I was curious about that guy that I mentioned yesterday, Rick, Jason.
Oh yeah. I couldn't find any information on him.
Something was weird about that. So I don't know.
The
what
guy
to think.
claims to be a producer or something,
Yeah,
and is collecting money. Yes.
Yeah, he's claiming he's executive producer, which really kind of bothered me.
Did not match the name of the executive producer that I found.
Exactly. So it kind of made me
scam.
wonder what the heck is going on there, and how many people are being ripped off on that end.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that Matt brought up just a little while ago, just before I came on, he was bringing up the immigration aspect. I personally think that Canada is going to buckle under the pressure of all this. I think we're already in big trouble for a lot of stuff, but this immigration thing, I think we're going to buckle hard. I'm already seeing it in my own area.
Yeah, well, I'd like to try to keep the topic focused tonight on this movie and the issues that it's bringing to light, rather than explore all these other issues.
Yeah, okay. I
Um,
wasn't aware that that was the main topic because when Matt brought it up, I thought I would. Yeah. Anyway,
and to kind of bring everything back into
sure.
perspective here for everybody. The tonight's subject matter started with a conversation about the movie, how it's done very well at the box office, even with a small production budget of $14.5 million, which to me seems like a huge amount of money, but in Hollywood terms, it's not much, I guess. Still, doing very well at the box office, outperforming the new Indiana Jones movie, which has a budget many times bigger. Uh, and yet, there are some who have concerns about it, including some victims and survivors of sex trafficking who have come forward to be critical of the movie, saying that it hasn't really given them a proper voice. And there's a lot of concern that maybe the producers of this movie are really focused too much just on money and might be kind of exploiting the situation or stirring the pot to get people to to maximize the revenue at the box office, right? So there were
You're-
some discussions about that. And I kind of pointed out too that I do see a convergence here of all these different events kind of coming together at once. There's the movie coming out just as we're seeing this Save the Children convoy coming online, which uses the same hashtag
Right.
Save
Yeah.
the Children as the movie, which is actually a QAnon hashtag originally that goes back at least to 2016, maybe before that. And it's also happening at a time when we're seeing now daily confrontations between protesters in the streets over these LGBTQ pride issues and drag queen story times, and people out there waving placards saying stop the pedophiles, stop the child groomers. And then this movie hits just at this time after having been shelved by Disney and then picked up by a different distribution company and produced by Angel Studios and released on July 4th, just in the aftermath of Pride Month. It just seems like, is it this coincidence? Is it coordinated? In politics, usually there are no coincidences. Makes me really wonder if someone's kind of pulling strings and coordinating everything, or is it just divine intervention?
It reminds me of the Blair Witch Project. Okay, bunch of university students with zero budget just before Halloween come out with this movie, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of the highest grossing horror films or whatever you want to call it of that period, right? Don't get me wrong, Rick. I want to save the children. I think everybody in the damn Maverick family want to save the children, save the women, save the elderly. Okay, that's just common sense, right?
It's just some people questioning how sincere these guys are, because if you go and watch, like I said, the red carpet premiere, you can watch it online, and all the actors and the people involved in the production, they come up for the interviews and they all say how Christian they are and how they all have these. It was a calling for them, to get involved in the movie. Maybe, but
they're using. What my thing is, I think it's a small minority of the radicals that they're going to infuriate to the point of somebody's going to do something very stupid, okay, and they're going to do it in the name of save the children or whatever, right? They're out there. You got your radicals.
And that was the other thing. It's like, was this released for political purposes? I mean, I think that any movie like this, which has a faith element to it, I think it also has a political element that's very strong. And media showing that it does have some connection to the Q movement, and Caviezel absolutely has a connection to the Q movement. So that's political.
100%.
So the movie immediately, it's like when I'm seeing them and hearing them on these live streams and podcast interviews, and they're throwing statistics around and nobody's questioning any of it. They're just taking it at face value. They're not saying, what's your source? Can you verify this information? What was the methodology used? What were the parameters for this? How are you defining sex trafficking? What age groups are we talking? Like, there's no specifics. It's like it's bigger. It's a bigger industry than all the professional sports leagues combined in North America. That's how huge the problem is. And I'm like, well, okay, but where's the documentation on that? I want to see it. When I look it up, it's much. I confess that the problem appears to be much bigger than I ever expected it would be. But these guys also have a profit motive, right? They want to get people jacked up so that they buy tickets. So me being a journalist, I want facts, and I automatically question when people just start throwing that kind of information out. I want to verify. I want to know what your source is. But when I'm watching the interviews online, like with Jordan Peterson, he's just all in. He didn't really ask any tough questions. He was just in agreement and alignment with them. It's like, he was almost afraid, I would say, to challenge them on anything. And I wouldn't even say you have to challenge. I'm just asking for just ask for some darn details so that we can fully understand the scope of the problem. You can't solve a problem, like really address it in an effective way, if you don't really have honest, solid information to go by. You can't create a program to combat a problem or a strategy or really do anything effective if you don't have solid, real data. And these days, too many of the government studies that are done are based on emotion and politics and flawed methodology, so that we get crap information, crap data to form the foundation of entire government programs that are doomed to fail because the methodology is flawed. It's based on neoliberal woke ideas and ideology. And it restricts actually the perspective through which this data is collected. That's one example. And in this particular case, the motivation clearly is to maximize the profit of the movie, and maybe there are political motivations behind it as well. So I'm just questioning this stuff because you can see that these motivations might be skewing the reality of everything, and they may not care. That's why I'm questioning their sincerity. And it's not that I'm saying the movie is good or bad, and I'm glad that the conversation is being had, but this is also an opportunity then really to drill down, find out what the real data is, find out how serious the problem is, and address the issue. If it's a real serious issue, then let's get to the facts and then address that effectively with the real information.
Well,
I thought the movie.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought the movie was going to be about Epstein and Hunter Biden and anybody involved in the sex trade, right?
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing, there's nothing to do with that, right? So
No.
Yeah,
No, and like, sorry, you go ahead, Note or Heidi. Why don't you go right ahead, and then I'll speak after.
No, I'm in agreement with Leo. I think it does seem to me that it has nothing, like, it seems like the Epstein thing like is completely separate from this. Based on what Rick is saying, I'm leaning towards actually agreeing that this could be some kind of distraction to some of the bigger crap that's, well, what is even bigger than this? I don't know. Erase that. But I don't know. It's all very, very confusing to me right now. I haven't seen it. I want to see it so I can, be a little bit more capable of discussing all of that, because it's supposed to be based on true events. So yeah.
Yeah, but as I pointed out, I mean, that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with making a movie like this, a dramatic representation of something that is based on what is supposed to be a true story. Sure, go ahead and make your movie, right? But people need to understand that what they're watching, that is not reality. That's not absolute truth. That's a dramatization of something. And so you need to go beyond that. Now you've got the conversation going, but now you have to go beyond and really seek out real information, real facts, get down to the real nitty gritty of the real issues. And then you can start to deal with the problem. But now you need to know, like, okay, well, how extensive is this? How many 3-year-olds really are there out there being used in this way? And where are they being used? And how is this happening? And then what do we need to do to address that particular issue? How much money is needed? What resources need to come to bear on this? Which departments or which arms of government or law enforcement need to deal with this? Is it national, international? Is it something that needs to be addressed in a multilateral, multinational way with a bunch of governments getting together to solve the problem because it's multi-jurisdictional? Or is it just something that's a huge problem just in the US or in Canada, and you can address it domestically? I mean, these are all questions that we really need to get to the bottom of, right? But you can't do it with just general broad statements that get people emotional. You need to start to look at the real data and not just throw a bunch of numbers around and ask no questions about it.
Exactly. And it is interesting that they didn't put out a documentary, because when I was first hearing about it, I thought this was going to be a documentary. And when I found out that it was, now they're calling it like based on a true story, it kind of made me go, and that,
Yeah. And that's why I wanted Matt to come on, because I saw that he had produced a couple of videos that started to really dig down, and he's got these online, and everybody should go and watch these things because he's done some, pretty impressive work there. And it's important because he does go beyond this. And you want to know, if you're going to go see the movie or donate money to Ballard's organizations, you want to know where that money is going. Is it really going to be effective? Not just have a knee-jerk emotional response and send the guy $100.
Oh yeah.
You want to know if it's actually going to do any good.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like,
Yeah, and like also too, there's a comment here in the box that stands out to me. JAEM is how you pronounce the name. He says it's a limited hangout, grains of truth, but then redirects toward the wrong culprits or obfuscates. So limited hangout is a term that the intelligence community uses where they do a soft disclosure of the truth or just show like a very vague picture of something. So if I take you down an example of a different Hollywood film, because programming in and of itself exists everywhere, especially in Hollywood. But if you actually take The Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan film, right? Harvey Dent, or Two-Face, the district attorney. Basically, what happens is Batman and Commissioner Gordon don't want the bad side of him to appear to the public, to be known. So they both mutually agree, hey, we'll cover this shit up, and we'll only show him as the hero that the people want to see. And so what does this have an effect on the public, like you and I? We then get addicted to the aspect of hopium because Batman justifies it, for lack of better words, right? So the thing too as well is, it's one thing to make a fictitious movie, and then it's another to make a movie about somebody named Tim Ballard, who is a very real person, who, as far as I'm concerned, hasn't done a damn thing to actually really combat trafficking. Like I said on the first part that you probably missed note, is that he's the kind of guy where, imagine a reality TV situation where a sting takes place, right, of the traffickers or whatever, and you see them get busted, children taken out of the room, but people don't ask questions beyond that. You know what I mean? And then what's the aftercare of the children look like? And with all the organizations too involved, like the videos that I had made on Sound of Freedom, there's 2 videos that I had done. I just released one just before coming on to the show here with Rick. But I explore how the money laundering actually works between organizations that have to do with Tim Ballard, Glenn Beck, and other people, right? So people are aware. Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck are both Mormon, and I'm not against people who have choose the Mormon faith or anything, but I am against the way that system works, because the Mormons actually have their own abuse helpline that is specifically reserved for bishops. Funny how that works, right? And the law firm that is used by those very same people, right, to cover up the abuse, and they literally joke about it and refer to their own organization as Pedophiles Are Us. You can look that up. Those same lawyers, whatever the company is called, I can't remember, but it's in my first video, they're literally retained by Tim Ballard, which is just hypocritical, and all things considering he literally I think he's from Utah, as far as I'm concerned, which is like the main base of the Mormon church. And it's like, why are you not looking into your own backyard? Why are you doing this overseas stuff when literally in your own backyard you see all kinds of abuse happening, let alone, like I already brought up, family and children's services. And I don't know what it's like in the States, if I'm honest with you. I'm in Canada. I don't know about you. But, those are things that need to be explored for sure. and same with the shelter situation as we were talking about. But I don't want to veer too far off topic here because the focus is about the movie and about Tim Ballard. But yeah, we do have to be aware, and we can't let our emotions take a hold of us. Where because this is definitely a very sensitive issue, but people are definitely trying to capitalize on it. And as Rick even brought up, the Save the Children convoy, like I don't have any judgments about this convoy because I have not looked into it, right? But they're literally using the banner of Save the Children, right? And this Tim Ballard movie or this Jim Caviezel movie comes out the timing is funny, right? And as well too, like I mean, I know with that convoy they're using those like Every Child Matters shirts, which is based off of something that we could really debate about here. I don't want to get Rick into too much hot water here talking about those shirts and all, but it seems like people are really trying to capitalize on the human trafficking thing, and it's like, this goes beyond the dollar sign. Like, where are your hearts at, right? So that's the end of my little rant there. So thanks for the free psychotherapy, everyone.
And guys, we have to make sure we're off by 8 p.m. because Lori has her show starting at 8. And I want to kind of clear the track so that she has access to everything, her Strange Bedfellows broadcast. So we're going to be carrying that tonight at 8 p.m. So we have just about 5 minutes. So I'll just throw it over to you guys for very quick final thoughts.
Who's first?
Well, you're speaking first, so you go ahead, sir.
Okay, final thoughts for me would be, I'd rather get behind somebody like Matt and do some creep catching, right? In there, because there's a lot of creeps out there, folks, and catch them, okay, in the act. And you could set something up. I respect those guys out there that are doing it on the street. And I tip my hat off to everybody here, especially you, Matt, and Note, and Heidi. Nice meeting you, Heidi. You had some great concepts. I'm going to look into your army thing there. Amy's Army, is it?
Allie's Army.
Allie's Army.
Allly. Yes.
Yeah, that's one of my daughter's names, so it should be easy.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So yeah, no, it is Allie's Army. Lori, I can't wait to watch your show finally because you're always on at the same time as Mr. Walker, and you could have anybody on, Tucker Carlson. I'm not watching you if you're on the same time as Rick Walker. Even you, Matt, if you're on at the same time as Rick Walker, I'm not watching it. But I'm going to indulge at 3:00 in the morning at work. I'm going to watch Matt the Seated, all his shit tonight, right till around noon when I leave. But ciao, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Leo. Heidi, over to you.
Okay, Matt, what is the name? Where can we watch your videos?
So on YouTube, I go by Matt the Unseated, very much like how it's worded right here. And if people have any questions for me too, whether they want to comment in the box or if they want to ask me privately, they can find me on Facebook just under Matt Unseated. There's no "the" in the center.
Okay.
So if people want to find me personally or they don't want something public or whatever it is, then yeah, they can message me directly that way.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Rick and Note.
Thank you, Heidi. Great to have you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Final thoughts, Note?
I wish I didn't miss the first part, but I'm glad I didn't know about Matt, and I'm looking forward to finding his videos and getting more informed about other aspects of things. I'm very open to all sides of things, and somewhere in the middle, there's the truth, right? And yeah, I didn't, unfortunately, everything's cutting out on me on my end. I don't know if it's just on my side, but I didn't hear Leo. I heard him say no, but I didn't hear what he said. But it was good to be there and be in the conversation. I'm going to still try to see the movie. I don't know how, but when I do, yeah, I'm going to probably be watching it with a different lens now, which is probably a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And, and that's
Question
about
everything.
it. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
we're almost out of time, so let's throw it over to Matt for a final thought.
Okay, I'll be as fast as possible here. I just want to say to everybody to use your discretion and don't let your emotions captivate you, or don't let your emotions take hold, I should say. If you notice that that is the case, that starts to happen, that's when you need to do some internal reflection and also perhaps some research on the subject once you've cleared that up. And also, I just want to say to you, I mean, I think Mouth of the South is in the chats there, but he definitely had a rough around the edges childhood, to say the least. But you know, I think that that's a good learning experience, and you know, sometimes that sort of a thing can definitely help. And I appreciate anybody that is willing to, you know, go the extra mile to do the research or hear anybody out. And you know, I'm a relatively obscure person on the internet, I guess, but I guess I'm growing in popularity now thanks to being here. But yeah, just all use your discretion, and I'm always an open book where you can find me easily and talk to me. You can find me on YouTube at Matt the Unseated, or through Facebook at just simply Matt Unseated. So yeah, and I'll be checking out what was the website with Ali called again?
Ali's
Uh,
Army.
Yeah, aliesarmy.com.
Okay.
So it's
Ali's Army. Okay, I'll be checking out aliesarmy.com, and as well to Kurt Boss in there. I'll be looking up Agnes Day. So thanks for that.
All right, guys, that gets us to
Thank
8
you.
p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us live here on the program. It's great to see your smiling faces on the video conference call. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Peace out, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. Take it
All
easy.
right, and stay tuned. Lori is up next with Strange Bedfellows and a special guest, Russell Bentley, the Donbass Cowboy. Up next on Strange Bedfellows, exclusively on Rumble. So if you're watching on the other platforms, check the description, click the link, and go over to Rumble to watch it, or just stay right here if you're already on the Rumble channel, and you'll be watching it. Thanks, guys. Ciao for now.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. And with that, we'll do this, and I'll run a promo, and then we'll come back and pick up Lori's show. Strange Bedfellows, straight ahead. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Fear not the storm, for truth is on our side. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now, at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program. For your mind.